The series begins by introducing Erin, a beautiful woman who has taken over her grandpa's publishing company. She is a strict and intimidating leader who is feared by all her employees. One day, due to a security guard's error in choosing a lavender fragrance, Erin decides to fire the employee. Despite her tough exterior, Erin is a skilled leader who does not hesitate to reject ideas that go against her company's values. On the other hand, her younger brother is more easygoing and open to new ideas from his team. Meanwhile, we meet Namcha, a good-looking young man who rides his bike to his family's veterinary clinic. He has just completed his studies to become a veterinarian and has become a popular figure at the clinic. As he tends to his animal patients, he dreams of starting his own animal hospital one day. At that time, Namcha brought an injured snake to his clinic. Despite a customer's attempt to help, she fainted upon seeing the snake. Fortunately, Namcha successfully operated on the snake, but his uncle still didn't recognize his abilities. Even when there was a dog in need of surgery, his uncle forbid him from performing the operation because he believed Namcha was inexperienced. Knowing that made Namcha feel unappreciated. So, Namcha is someone who values people for who they are, not just their appearance. When a female customer at his clinic tried to seduce him, Erin stepped in and claimed to be his girlfriend. Erin did this at the request of Namcha's brother, who was worried about the effect on Namcha's image. She told Namcha the truth outside, revealing that she did it because she didn't like the woman and because Namcha's brother asked her to. During lunch together, Erin attempted to offer advice to Namcha, who felt like he was being treated like a child even though he had excelled in his studies. Despite his achievements, Namcha still struggled to earn the trust of his family when it came to running his veterinary clinic. As they talked, Erin and Namcha reminisced about their past relationship, which had ended 7 years prior. Erin had been in college at the time while Namcha was still in high school. She had broken things off because she felt their love was just puppy love. Now, she reminded Namcha to be more polite to her because she was older than him. Meanwhile, Erin sat at home, flipping through old memories with her lover Namcha. Suddenly, her younger sister named and burst into the room. Erin already knew about Erin's past relationship with Namcha, but she still had feelings for him. When it came to give Erin a gift, Namcha saw his chance to meet Erin and asked to come over for dinner at their house. But Erin refused, not wanting Namcha to rekindle his romance with Erin. Instead, Erin revealed that Erin was engaged to a man named Jin, who her grandpa had chosen. Jin was a lawyer, and she hoped that he would make Erin happy. However, hearing that, Namcha was stunned and saddened by this news, causing him to accidentally spill water on Erin's clothes. Meanwhile, Erin's grandpa insisted that she get engaged to their family lawyer, Jin. Jin had long had feelings for Erin, and her grandpa saw her as the future head of their family company. Erin didn't want to disappoint her grandpa, so she pretended to agree to the match. However, outside of the meeting, she accused Jin of only wanting to marry her for her family's wealth. Soon after, their argument was interrupted by the arrival of Erin and Namcha, who had been spending time together. Erin felt jealous seeing and wearing Namcha's clothes, and so she tried to make Namcha jealous by showing affection towards Jin. This only made Namcha even more upset. Meanwhile, Namcha's parents were worried about him because he had missed dinner with the family. When they talked to him, he revealed that he felt worthless and undeserving of Erin's love. His sadness only grew stronger. On the other hand, Namcha's family discussed how to give him the chance to prove his skills at their clinic. They believed he had the potential to run it successfully. Soon after, Namcha and Erin met on the balcony and he expressed his disapproval of her marrying someone else. He did silly things to get her to promise to marry him instead. Despite initially being annoyed, Erin eventually felt happy. The next morning, Erin and Namcha went for a jog and he gave her some advice on feeding dogs. Namcha looked cool and mature, which made Erin jealous. At the same time, Jin also visited Erin's house and her grandpa hoped that he would take care of Erin when he was gone. Hearing that, he was determined to win Erin's heart. However, despite Jin's efforts, Erin remained devoted to Namcha. Elsewhere, Namcha asked Erin's older sister to invite Erin to join them. Little did Erin's older sister know that Namcha and Erin were ever having a relationship before. Even now, Namcha still had feelings for Erin. But when Erin was asked to come along, she sadly declined because she had to work. As Erin left for the office, she ran into An who needed to see the doctor. Erin wanted to accompany her sister, but she couldn't because of her job. On the other hand, Jin, who had been waiting to see Erin, felt sad that she had left without saying goodbye. He was hoping to see her that day. Later, An reached out to Namcha for help with taking her to the doctor. Namcha, who had some free time, gladly agreed to go with An. The doctor's visit went well, and the doctor recommended light exercise. An was thrilled with the doctor's advice because she could now ask Namcha to exercise with her. Meanwhile, in another place, Erin was having trouble with a former employee who had not accepted being fired. The disgruntled employee was now seeking revenge on her. Worried and scared, she tried to reach out to An for help. At that time, a security guard who had been fired by Erin felt angry and upset. There, she explained that she didn't fire him because she disliked him, but because he had a bad attitude towards his superiors. Compared to the previous security guard, he had performed poorly. But this man was now even more upset and ended up hurting Erin. Luckily, Namcha arrived just in time to save her. After the incident, Namcha helped treat Erin's wound and suggested that she go see a doctor to avoid any lasting trauma. But when Erin went to the hospital to look for Namcha, she couldn't find him. She suspected he had gone off somewhere with his phone. Later, and discovered that Namcha was with Erin in the office. Despite Erin's initial reluctance, Namcha insisted on accompanying her to the hospital. Erin was still shaken from what had happened earlier. Even, she had mistaken Namcha for a thief and sprayed him with something. She felt terrible about it. With no other option, she allowed him to come with her. They rushed to the hospital to treat the wound on her neck. As they were waiting, Namcha saw a man carrying a pet. He offered to take care of the animal. Erin was surprised to see his enthusiasm. It reminded her of a time in the past when he had protected a lizard from her. She was afraid of lizards, but Namcha had shown kindness and saved the little creature. Erin had always admired Namcha's love for animals. He was a responsible veterinarian who took good care of them. He believed that all animals deserve to live just like humans, and he treated them with the same care and attention. It was a quality that Erin greatly respected in him. In the evening, Erin was feeling really down. She thought that no one cared about her. But Jin noticed how sad she was and tried to comfort her. Suddenly, Erin showed up with messy hair because of Namcha's pet. Erin took out her frustrations on her and then retreated to her room. She cried and thought about how people always compared her to Erin. Meanwhile, Namcha couldn't sleep. He was worried about Erin and wanted to know more about her trauma. As he tried to rest, Erin had nightmares about her parents' death. She woke up to a message from Namcha, who was still worried about her. He asked her if she had any bad dreams because of what happened earlier. The next day, Namcha was waiting anxiously for Erin at the park. When he saw her, he immediately asked how she was feeling. At that moment, Erin felt shy but also happy about his attention. Suddenly, they were interrupted by the arrival of In. There, and seemed annoyed by their closeness, which made Erin feel embarrassed. Then, she quickly pushed Namcha away and left. Another day, Erin's car broke down on the way to her apartment. Shortly after, Jin offered to help, but Namcha arrived and also offered to take Erin. At that time, they argued about who should accompany her, and Erin saw that In was irritated by Namcha's concern for her. So, she decided to let Jin accompany her instead. On the trip, Erin was starting to feel irritated with Jin, who seemed to have an encyclopedic knowledge of himself. On the other hand, Jin was genuinely interested in getting to know her better, but he sensed that she was keeping her distance from him. What Jin didn't realize was that Erin had feelings for Namcha, who had been a constant source of comfort for her during tough times. As it turned out, Jin knew about her crush on Namcha, and he also knew that Namcha had feelings for Erin. Despite this, Erin had made a promise to her mother before she passed away that she would take care of her sister In, and that included sacrificing her own happiness for her sisters. So, even though Erin loved Namcha, she decided to let him go so that In could have a chance to be with him. Erin knew that Namcha would always be there for her whenever she needed him, but she was willing to put her own feelings aside for her sister's sake. However, Namcha couldn't understand why Erin had broken up with him. Little did he know, she had done it out of selflessness and love for her family. Soon after, Erin was starting to feel really frustrated with Jin. He wouldn't stop talking about her and her sister In, even though they both had feelings for the same guy. So, she asked Jin to take her to a cafe instead of going back to his apartment. As they walked into the cafe, Erin was relieved to see that the owner was her friend. She and the owner of the cafe had been friends for a long time, and they were also good friends with Namcha. Meanwhile, another girl named Ploy, who also had feelings for Namcha, decided to visit him at his clinic under the pretense of checking on her dog's health. At that moment, she was thrilled to learn that Erin was just a friend of Namcha's brother and not his girlfriend. Feeling emboldened, Ploy asked Namcha to go to a cafe with her, and he agreed because he wanted to meet up with Erin and her friend. When they arrived, Erin was already there and feeling a bit annoyed by Ploy's presence. To make matters worse, Ploy started teasing Erin about looking older than her. However, Erin didn't take kindly to this and decided to make Ploy jealous by talking about Namcha's past and acting more intimate with him. But things took a turn when Erin asked to tag along with Ploy and Namcha on their date. As they left the cafe, Jin saw them and was disappointed to realize that Erin had lied to him about meeting Namcha. When Jin confronted her about it, Erin refused to accept the label of liar and explained that she had accidentally run into Namcha and Ploy. In the end, she rushed Ploy away from the scene to avoid any further confrontation. Long story short, something strange happened at Namcha's clinic. Ploy thought Erin was playing a prank on her, so she asked her dog to bark at Erin. Then, Erin tried to calm the dog down, but it wouldn't stop barking. Afterward, Erin stumbled upon a room full of predatory animals, and she became upset at the sight of them. Shortly after, Namcha came to comfort Erin, who was still grieving the loss of her parents. He apologized and hugged her, but their moment was interrupted by the sudden arrival of Namcha's sister, Tan. Suddenly, Erin quickly pushed Namcha away, embarrassed by the situation. At that time, Tan was confused by Erin's behavior and the close proximity between her brother and Erin. Everyone was left feeling awkward and uneasy. Elsewhere, Jin and In finally decided to team up to help their loved ones. Namcha then took Tan to Irin's place, and at that time, Tan had no suspicion about Jin and Irin. In the evening, the three of them drank together and Irin got drunk as she had too much to drink. Namcha then took Irin to her room to rest, and because she still had feelings for him, Irin kissed Namcha when she was drunk. The next day, In visited Irin's place and asked about the visitor from the previous night. This made Irin uncomfortable, and she felt suspicious that her sister was doubting her. However, In mustered the courage to confess her feelings to Irin and asked for her help to get Namcha. However, Irin could not say no to her sister and called Namcha for dinner, thinking it was another chance for In. Soon after, she arranged the dinner to help Namcha and In to get together. After that, In met Jin and shared the news that their plan was working. Irin was embarrassed and guilty when she remembered the incident from the previous night. She unconsciously kissed Namcha while drunk, and seeing his message made her feel even more guilty. The next day, Namcha paid a visit to Irin at her apartment. However, to his surprise, Jin had already taken Irin back to her own place and served her dinner because she had not eaten anything that day. At that moment, Namcha was feeling irritated and jealous, so he confronted Irin, asking her why she had betrayed him by having dinner with Jin. Despite his words and emotions, Irin remained unmoved and warned him not to see her again. Irin did not consider how Namcha felt, leaving him alone to deal with his pain. Nevertheless, little did he know that Irin was weeping and unable to stop her tears from falling because she had lied to Namcha for her sister. Feeling dejected by Irin's behavior, Namcha decided to calm himself down at his brother's friend's cafe that night. He was saddened by his problem and tried to take his mind off it until his sister's friend showed him a video that made him smile again. The video was of Irin, who had gotten drunk and confessed her feelings about the necklace that Namcha had given her, revealing that she really liked it. After watching the video, Namcha immediately rushed to her apartment to reconcile with her. As the sun rose on Irin's birthday, she was greeted by Namcha, who had prepared himself neatly for this special occasion. He wished her a very happy birthday and invited her to celebrate with him. Soon after, Jin arrived too, eager to pick up Irin, but Namcha had gotten there first, and so Jin missed his chance to see her. Namcha had planned a wonderful day for Irin, starting with a prayer where they released fish into the sea, hoping for good fortune on her birthday. Then, Namcha surprised her by bringing turtles that he had promised to look after for a couple. They spent some time with the adorable creatures before heading to a delicious meal together. There, Namcha unveiled his next surprise, a birthday song for Irin, and he made a heartfelt wish for her happiness and their relationship. To top it all off, he gave Irin a free food stamp card for life, a generous gesture that left her feeling truly touched. As Irin left Jin's room, she overheard some of her employees gossiping and scolded them for it. However, her mind was preoccupied with an idea that Namcha had mentioned to her the other day. Determined to increase her company's sales, Irin instructed her staff to prepare the necessary materials. Later, when Jin drove Irin home, he told her that her car was still being repaired, even though it was already fixed. At that time, he wanted her to stay with him longer, and he even gave her a special birthday gift. But Namcha, who was waiting for Irin in front of her apartment, saw the present. Namcha had followed Irin because he wanted to be with her on her birthday. When he saw her with the gift, he asked if it was from Jin, but before Irin could answer, Jin arrived to return her forgotten cell phone. The atmosphere was tense as the three of them faced each other, aware of the love triangle between them. Irin, not wanting to be part of the argument, quickly left. Meanwhile, Namcha and Jin continued to argue, leaving the fate of their relationships with Irin uncertain. Then, Jin playfully teased Namcha, urging him to focus on his career as a veterinarian instead of dreaming of marrying Irin. However, Namcha didn't think Jin had any right to make such comments, considering he was just an employee of Irin's grandpa's company. Later, Jin called Irin to discuss their plan, while Irin met with Namcha and asked him to accompany her to a disco. However, Namcha was hesitant, knowing about Irin's health condition, but Irin had received permission from her doctor to try some drinks. She was feeling down because she thought nobody cared about her, even though Irin loved her very much. At the disco, Irin immediately started drinking and having fun, while Namcha chose not to drink and watched her from the sidelines. In couldn't feel the sincerity from Irin, so she forced Namcha to accompany her. Despite his reservations, Namcha stayed by her side, hoping to bring her back to her senses. As the night progressed, and began to feel a bit dizzy and disoriented, making her look drunk. At that time, Namcha noticed that In was in a bad state. Without a second thought, he decided to take her home to make sure she was safe. But In had other plans in mind. She secretly hoped to spend more time with him and intentionally delayed going home. As they walked, In's mind was spinning, and she could hardly keep her eyes open. She couldn't resist the urge to kiss Namcha, who was taken aback by her sudden advances. Realizing that she was not in her right mind, Namcha stopped her immediately and urged her to go home before her grandpa got worried. Once they arrived at In's house, she begged Namcha to let her stay over for the night, fearing her grandpa's wrath if she arrived home late. However, Namcha reluctantly agreed and took her to his house. But he made it clear that he was just a friend and nothing more. Despite Namcha's clear intentions, In couldn't resist making another move on him. She wanted to take their friendship to the next level and tried to convince him to sleep with her. but he refused and realized that they should not cross the line between friends. Once and left, Namcha's parents warned their son to be cautious with his friend. His father also emphasized the importance of using protection during sexual activities. Hearing that, Namcha was perplexed since he and In were merely friends. Meanwhile, in another location, In faced her grandpa's wrath for not returning home the previous night. She told him that she had gone out with her boyfriend, which only enraged her grandpa further. He was concerned about his granddaughter's health and well-being. Later, when they reached the office, In's grandpa shared the incident with Irin. Irin inquired about her whereabouts and whom she had spent the night with, and intentionally made Irin jealous by telling her that she had spent time with Namcha. Upon hearing this, Irin was disappointed and annoyed with the situation. She was further upset when she saw In's elated expression. As a result, Irin decided to give up the necklace that Namcha had gifted her, feeling dejected and let down. On the other hand, Namcha did not dwell on the events of the previous night since he felt that nothing had transpired between himself and In. The next day, Namcha excelled at the clinic while nursing a bird back to health after its owner's death. Meanwhile, In and Jin schemed to break up Irin and Namcha, and believed that she had already misled Namcha's parents into thinking that they were romantically involved. Later that evening, over dinner with Irin, Jin professed his love for her, claiming that his intentions to marry her were not based solely on her family's wealth. At that moment, she remained skeptical of Jin's sincerity but agreed to marry him anyway, following her grandpa's wishes. She confessed that she could not love him and Jin begged for a chance to change her feelings. Meanwhile, In's grandpa asked her to invite the man who had been with her the day before to their house. Despite her reluctance, she was compelled to call Namcha to come to her house. The following day, Namcha arrived to meet In's grandpa, who asked In to leave. There, Namcha was puzzled by the situation and unsure of what her grandpa wanted to discuss with him. So, In's grandpa was strict and had an old-fashioned perspective. He scolded Namcha for letting In go to a disco, despite knowing that she was not as healthy as others. There was a miscommunication since Namcha confessed that he wanted to date one of the grandchildren, but the grandpa assumed that he meant In when Namcha was interested in Irin. On the other hand, In was anxious outside the room, worrying about her grandpa's reaction towards Namcha. Shortly after, Jin found her and asked why she was there, and explained that she was worried since her grandpa knew the truth, and Namcha admitted that he liked Irin. After their conversation, her grandpa called In and advised her to ask for permission every time she left the house. He still believed that In was close to Namcha, and she chose not to clarify the misunderstanding. Soon after, Jin followed Namcha to learn about their conversation and became concerned that Irin might change her mind about their relationship. Shortly after ending their argument, In informed Jin that her grandpa had misunderstood Namcha. They then used the misunderstanding between Namcha and her grandpa to sabotage their plans to pursue the people they desired. Soon after, Jin met with grandpa and declared that Irin had accepted him as her boyfriend, which made grandpa proud. On the other hand, Namcha attempted to meet Irin but she deliberately avoided him. Despite the rejection, he persisted and eventually met with Irin at his apartment. He felt jealous and annoyed upon seeing the ring that Jin had given to Irin. Then, he informed Irin that he had expressed his feelings to her grandpa and they were now dating. Irin was curious about her grandpa's response and asked Namcha, who promised to tell her during their meeting at In's apartment. However, Namcha accidentally dropped the gift that Jin had given to Irin, showing his disdain for the present. Suddenly, her attitude towards Namcha changed, leaving him wondering what had happened. This caused resentment between them. All of a sudden, a loud clap of thunder roared through the air, causing Irin to jump with surprise and fear. She immediately clung onto Namcha for comfort. It was then that she confessed her feelings of jealousy and upset towards Namcha, who had slept within. This news made him feel pleased, knowing that he had the power to make Irin feel jealous. Meanwhile, Irin, still fuming with anger, kicked Namcha out of her apartment. But just as he left, Namcha's sister unexpectedly showed up at Irin's doorstep. Not wanting to reveal their secret, Irin quickly ordered Namcha to hide out on her balcony. It turned out that Tan and her best friend named Peng had come to celebrate Irin's birthday together. At that time, Irin kept her two best friends occupied so they wouldn't discover that Namcha was also present. While Tan and Peng were engrossed in a drama, Irin sneaked a peek at Namcha's whereabouts. To her surprise, she found him drenched in the rain outside. Another bolt of lightning illuminated the sky, causing Irin to instinctively hold onto Namcha again out of fear. At that moment, he was taken aback, not realizing that Irin was scared of thunder. But she quickly denied it, insisting that she was merely surprised, not frightened. The following day, as Tan and Peng were leaving, they bumped into Jin, who had come to greet Irin. At that time, Jin tried to be friendly with Irin's friends, but she didn't introduce him as her boyfriend. Instead, she said he was just an employee at her company. This made Jin feel disappointed, and he noticed that Irin wasn't wearing the ring he gave her. It dawned on him that Irin didn't consider him to be her boyfriend. At the clinic, Namcha felt jealous when his sister bragged about Jin in front of him. Meanwhile, Peng tried to persuade Irin to introduce Jin as her boyfriend to her friends. Tan later informed Namcha that Irin would introduce Jin as her boyfriend soon, but Namcha was irritated because he felt let down by Irin. elsewhere and met with Jin to pressure him into marrying Erin immediately. But Jin refused, advising him to be patient and not force Erin to accept him. He warned that pressuring Erin would only push her away. He then reminded him that she was just as beautiful as Erin and needed to be more confident in herself. The next day, after much anticipation, Erin finally brought Jin to meet her best friend at Peng's cafe. Previously, Namcha had purposely asked Erin to come with them, and when she did, she introduced Jin as her boyfriend. Jin did his best to make a good impression, and Peng and Tan congratulated him, knowing that winning Erin's heart was no easy feat. He even tried to taunt Namcha by insinuating that he was lucky to have won Erin's heart despite being new in her life. However, Namcha didn't like Jin's arrogance and began to pester him and Erin. Then, he tried to warn Namcha not to act childish and accept that Erin had chosen him as her boyfriend. But Namcha couldn't accept this because he was convinced that Erin still loved him. Feeling down, Namcha sought advice from his older sister, who told him to stop obsessing over the person he loved. His sister suggested that Namcha should distance himself a little so that the person he loved would start to appreciate his presence more. The following day, while exercising in the park within, Erin began to miss Namcha, who had always been there for her. She even walked back and forth in front of his house, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. Curious, Erin went to the clinic where Namcha worked. She pretended to be there to check on her turtle, but Namcha ignored her, which upset her even more. In a bid to get Namcha's attention, Erin pretended to faint. It worked, and he caught her just in time. Then, they made up, as Namcha didn't like avoiding Erin for long. However, he was still annoyed with Erin for introducing Jin as her boyfriend from across the street. On the other hand, Peng, who saw the closeness between Erin and Namcha, wondered about their relationship before Erin left. At home, Erin informed him that she was going to meet the translator for their new book. Feeling lonely, asked Namcha to hang out over the weekend. When Namcha learned that Erin would be out of town alone, he became worried and decided to accompany her. Namcha came up with a plan that involved Ploy's dog pretending to be hit by Erin's car. Soon after, Erin got out of the car to help the dog, and Namcha took it to his clinic for treatment. He then told Erin that he would accompany her on her trip to meet the translator. They enjoyed their time together, almost like a romantic couple. During their trip, they went to the beach and reminisced about their past romantic moments. They then visited the professor, who turned out to have retired and rejected their offer. The professor seemed to be in a hurry and asked them to leave. But as they were leaving, they heard cow screams coming from the professor's yard. Curious, they followed him and found out that the professor was waiting for his cow to give birth. It was his first time and he didn't know what to do. Then, Namcha, with his veterinary skills, immediately sprang into action to assist in the birth of a cow. The professor was immensely grateful to Namcha for saving his beloved animal. In appreciation, the professor invited Namcha and Erin to stay at his house since they had not made any lodging arrangements. The professor was deeply impressed by Namcha's abilities and asked about his relationship with Erin, as well as how she understood the urgency of finding a veterinarian. The professor also instructed Erin to express her gratitude to Namcha, stating that if it weren't for him, he would have turned her away. The professor was so impressed with Namcha that he offered to accept the job Erin offered under one condition: that she must accept Namcha's love. At that time, Erin had no choice but to agree, as she desperately needed the professor's expertise. While the professor and Namcha talked, Erin overheard their conversation. Namcha passionately advocated for Erin's company and convinced the professor to accept the job offer. Erin was deeply touched by Namcha's sincere willingness to help her company. Soon after, as Namcha snoozed away, Erin couldn't resist the temptation to doodle a mischievous cat on his face. The next day, when Namcha was tending to the professor's cows, he was totally oblivious to the feline graffiti on his face, which made Erin and the professor chuckle at his expense. Soon after, Namcha and Erin spent the rest of the day exploring, and it was clear they were having a blast together. They even made a secret wish to each other, hoping to stay together forever. But when Namcha spilled the beans about his wish, Erin gave him a swift smack in the mouth, convinced that revealing your wishes jinxes them. That evening, they all had dinner at the professor's house, and Erin was over the moon because the professor accepted her job offer. The professor even thanked Namcha for his contribution to the deal, which made Erin ecstatic. On the other hand, as the news of Namcha's departure with Erin reached her, En's face twisted in anger and disappointment. Her fury surged within her and she flung a picture of her and Erin with all her might, shattering it into pieces. Later that night, Erin lay in bed, reminiscing about the joyful moments she had shared with Namcha. However, the thought of returning home the next day made her realize that their happiness was fleeting and would soon come to an end. Meanwhile, Namcha, unwilling to let go of their happiness, tried to persuade Erin that they could still fight for it together. He promised to declare his love for Erin publicly and make it clear to En that his feelings for her were strictly platonic. However, Erin refused to let him make such a sacrifice, as she knew how much En coveted his affection. The following day, as they said goodbye to their professor, Erin expressed her gratitude for his assistance in translating her book. Meanwhile, Namcha offered to help the professor with his cow should the need arise. As for In, her sadness and disappointment were palpable. She felt betrayed by her friends and promptly shared the news of their trip with Jin. Long story short, Namcha and Erin arrived at Erin's apartment, but she promptly asked him to leave. Just then, In appeared unexpectedly and launched into a tirade of insults directed at Erin. There, Namcha defended Erin and professed his love for her. On the other hand, In's anger only intensified upon seeing Namcha's loyalty to Erin, and she eventually stormed off. Seeing that, Erin felt guilty and sad for causing a rift between her and her sister and blamed Namcha for being the cause of their feud. Feeling disappointed and upset, In drove aimlessly and ended up getting into a car accident. Soon after, Jin contacted Erin and urged her to come to the hospital. The doctor informed them that In needed a donor, but Erin's blood type was incompatible with hers. In the end, Jin became the donor, saving In's life. At that time, Erin felt grateful towards Jin for his kindness. The next day, Namcha learned of In's accident and rushed to the hospital, only to be stopped by Jin. He suspected Namcha of being the cause of In's accident and wondered if he was the root of the sisters' strife. Afterward, Jin went to In's grandpa to inquire about the different blood types, but was reprimanded for meddling in their affairs. After a few days, In finally regained consciousness and saw Erin by her side. However, her anger flared up, and she kicked Erin away. This made Erin even sadder because she genuinely wanted to take care of her sister. Later, Jin came to visit In and continued to ponder the mystery of the sisters' different blood types, and explained that when their parents died, Erin couldn't help them because they had different blood types. The next day, Erin and her grandpa visited In, who was worried that Erin falling ill would negatively impact his business. Soon after, Namcha arrived and expressed his desire to put an end to the resentment between him and Erin. He assured In that his feelings for her were purely platonic and his heart belonged to Erin alone. However, her grandpa overheard their conversation and mistakenly believed that Namcha had been romantically involved with In all along. But then, Namcha tried to clear the air by explaining that his relationship with In was just a friendship, but this only served to further irritate her. She threatened to harm herself if they didn't leave her room immediately. Everyone chose to comply with her wishes to calm her down. As they exited In's room, her grandpa and Erin felt disappointed with how Namcha had treated In. Then, Jin took advantage of the situation and stirred up more animosity towards Namcha. Soon after, Grandpa forbade his grandchildren from associating with Namcha, believing him to be unworthy of their company. Then, Erin warned Jin not to meddle in family affairs and stop badmouthing Namcha in front of her grandpa. Shortly after, Namcha confronted Jin about talking behind his back. He mocked Jin for using underhanded tactics to win Erin's heart, but he vowed to prove his worthiness to her. At that moment, they almost came to blows, but Erin intervened and asked to speak to Namcha alone. Afterward, Namcha hugged Erin, knowing that she had a tough day dealing with In's situation. She finally let out her pent-up emotions in his arms, feeling saddened by In's sudden change in attitude towards her. There, Namcha comforted Erin and promised to always be there for her. Meanwhile, Jin felt even more disappointed and jealous when he saw Erin crying in Namcha's arms. Then, Erin asked Namcha to accept In because she didn't want her to get hurt even more. At that time, In kept crying, remembering the old times when Namcha was always there for her. But Namcha had already confessed his love for Erin. Tan felt sad and jealous seeing Namcha's closeness to her sister, and those memories made her think about ending her life. Thankfully, Jin came just in time to save her. He encouraged her not to give up and promised to help her get what she wants. Soon after, Jin told Erin about In's condition and how close she came to ending her life. Erin blamed herself for not making her sister happy. Jin also told their grandpa about In's attempt to hurt herself, which made him hate Namcha even more. This confused Jin, who sensed that the grandpa was hiding something. When he asked, the grandpa only said he misspoke. The next day, Jin and Namcha met at Erin's house and started arguing. There, he accused Jin of using In as an excuse to break them up. He warned Jin that he would not give up on his relationship with Erin. But Grandpa interrupted them and scolded Namcha, telling him to stay away from his grandchildren. Then, Namcha promised to prove himself worthy of their trust. One day, Namcha met with Ploy to discuss a project. At that time, Peng saw them and sent a photo to Erin, making her jealous. But Tan was proud of her brother's hard work and agreed to help with the project. While they were working, Erin called Tan and asked her to be a speaker for her company's podcast about pet books. They talked about Namcha's new girlfriend, but Tan didn't know anything. She suggested that Erin ask Namcha. Then, when Erin found out about this, she was shocked and turned off her phone. Meanwhile, at the hospital, In was feeling bored because she had to eat the same food every day. But Jin was considerate, and he cooked her some delicious instant noodles mixed with eggs sunny side up. That made her feel better. One night, Erin came to visit her at the hospital. but things didn't go as planned. Jin got upset and said some hurtful things to Erin. Erin was heartbroken because she never expected her sister to hate her so much. However, Erin didn't give up on In. She tried to advise her to stop thinking negatively and to compete in a healthy manner. She was willing to give up everything if it meant that In could beat herself. Sadly, In was still emotional and asked Erin to leave. Then, Erin left the room, feeling sad and alone. At that moment, Namcha saw her crying and came to comfort her. He told her that she was not evil and that she was only doing what she thought was best for her family and company. Finally, after releasing the burden of her sadness, Erin felt calmer in Namcha's embrace. The day after Erin felt upset at the hospital, Namcha surprised her with sweet gifts to make her start her day happier. On the first day, he gave her chocolate, and on the second day, he gave her flowers. But on the third day, he didn't give her anything, which made Erin upset. Meanwhile, Tan was getting ready to appear on a podcast show at Erin's company. Namcha and his sister discussed their new project with their parents, who were very supportive of their good ideas. Their mother even saw Tan's appearance as a good opportunity to promote their veterinary clinic. At the same time, Erin was excited about preparing for her company's first podcast, and her grandpa came to monitor the event. However, Tan got into trouble on the road and was stuck. Knowing that, Erin panicked when she couldn't reach her on the phone, not knowing Tan was arguing with another motorist. Because of that, Namcha had to replace Tan at Erin's company podcast show because she got into trouble on the way there. However, Erin's grandpa was not convinced of Namcha's ability and still disliked him. But Namcha bravely asked for the opportunity to prove himself and promised to take responsibility if he caused any harm to Erin's company. Soon after, Grandpa left, and Erin talked to Namcha. She was also doubtful of him at first, but Namcha convinced her by showing her the book he had read. Meanwhile, Jin was taking it home, but she was disappointed that her grandpa put the company before her by attending the podcast instead of being with her. At the podcast, Namcha spoke and impressed everyone with his intelligence and good looks. Even Erin's employees admired him. Erin's grandpa watched from a distance, feeling relieved that the event went well. After the podcast event, Erin met her grandpa, who asked about her relationship with Namcha. Before Erin could answer, he came into the room. Suddenly, Erin's grandpa had a health problem, and Namcha gave him first aid while waiting for the ambulance. Grandpa was taken to the hospital, and Erin blamed herself for the misfortunes that had befallen those around her, including In's accident and her grandpa's illness. Namcha tried to calm her down and remind her that it wasn't her fault. Soon after, In and Jin came to visit Grandpa, and In started making sarcastic comments about Namcha and Erin. Intan's selfishness made her forget all the kindness Erin had shown her. Namcha reminded In that she was being used by Jin. However, Jin disagreed and argued with Namcha until Erin asked him to leave. As Erin and Namcha departed, In seethed with anger towards Erin. However, Jin comforted her and predicted that the couple's relationship would eventually falter. Suddenly, Grandpa regained consciousness and recalled the incident when Namcha held Erin's hand to calm her down during his illness. In, on the other hand, went to see her grandpa, but her true intention was to ask for his help in marrying Namcha. To In's dismay, her grandpa was disappointed with her selfishness and lack of concern for his well-being. Despite being aware of Namcha's disinterest in her, and persisted and begged her grandpa to arrange the marriage. Meanwhile, Erin and Namcha grew closer, exercising together and eventually confessing their feelings for one another. In, however, intentionally met with Tan to reveal the truth about the couple's relationship, but Tan refused to believe it as she couldn't fathom her high school-age sister dating her best friend. Soon after, Tan went to Erin's apartment to confirm the truth and was disappointed to see how close Erin and Namcha were. She felt deceived by her best friend. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Grandpa asked Jin to retrieve the will he made when Jin's father was still the family lawyer. The following day, Tan met with Peng and expressed her disappointment about being fooled by Erin. When Erin showed up, Tan chose to leave, feeling fed up with meeting liars like her. However, Erin and Peng were confused and asked for an explanation. Tan revealed that she already knew about Erin's relationship with Namcha and was disappointed that Erin had lied to her. Although Erin tried to explain, Tan refused to listen and left. There, she regretted the destruction of their friendship and finally confided in Peng that she was indeed dating Namcha. She cried as she realized the truth had cost her a cherished friendship. At that moment, Erin felt terrible for betraying Tan's trust and ruining their friendship. Then, Peng tried to calm her down and promised to talk to Tan to make things right. However, something fell off to Peng because Tan knew about the relationship between Erin and Namcha, which had been going on since high school. It seemed like someone had deliberately told her. Then, Erin eventually realized that her own sister, In, was the one who spilled the beans. When Namcha came to meet Erin at Peng's cafe, Erin couldn't bring herself to face him. Namcha tried to convince her that he didn't want to lose her, but Erin was still confused and didn't know what to do. At that time, Peng felt sorry for Namcha because she could see how sincere he was. Meanwhile, at the office, Jin was searching for his grandpa's will but stumbled upon Erin's adoption letter instead. He was curious and asked his grandpa about the will, only to find out that all of his assets were being given to Erin because she was his biological granddaughter. Even though Erin had been more capable, Grandpa never loved her as much because of her adoption status. He only needed her to help him manage his company until Erin could take over. Back to Ton. So, she was still upset about what happened yesterday, and she couldn't focus on her work. On top of that, rumors were swirling around social media and causing more problems. When Namcha tried to talk to her, she ignored him, and this made him confused and worried about her. Suddenly, his uncle arrived and scolded Namcha for ruining their veterinary clinic's reputation. Namcha felt guilty and wanted to fix the situation. To find a solution, Namcha went to observe a new animal clinic nearby. He saw his uncle there, along with some of their old customers. While he was leaving, he noticed a man holding an injured dog and looking very worried. Namcha learned that the dog was a stray that he accidentally hit with his motorcycle, and the man couldn't afford to pay for its medical treatment. Soon after, Namcha took the man and the dog to his own clinic to help them. His act of kindness was caught on video by several bystanders as he rode his motorcycle with the man and the dog on the back. The man was grateful for the help and amazed by his willingness to save even wild animals. Later that evening, Namcha's parents scolded both him and Tan for the decline in their clinic's business due to the rumors. They also noticed that his uncle had been spending time at a rival clinic, which made the siblings suspicious of his intentions. Elsewhere, Jin felt terrible for Erin, who was being used by her grandpa. He wanted to tell her about it, but he was afraid to disobey her grandpa's orders to keep it a secret. Later on, Erin asked her employees to promote their book project more on social media because she felt responsible for its success. The next day, Namcha's video became a big hit on social media, and this boosted Erin's book sales as well. Then, Jin met with Erin to tell her about the project's success, but Erin was annoyed to see him. Shortly after, Jin explained that Erin had been wrong about her grandpa, who actually loved her very much and had given all his wealth to her. He also told Erin about Erin's adoption letter, and this news made her emotional. She realized that Erin was not her real sister, and she felt hurt that Erin had taken everything that belonged to her. As the sun set, Namcha's family gathered to celebrate his success in selling Erin's book. Then, Namcha thanked Erin for helping him go viral on YouTube, but Tan disagreed. She believed Namcha's success came from a video where he rescued a severely injured stray dog. Soon after, Namcha went outside to call Erin, but Tan scolded him. She was upset because they lied to her. The more Namcha defended Erin, the angrier Tan became. Afterward, Erin arrived and publicly humiliated Erin in front of her employees. She handed Erin an adoption letter and told her to leave the company, saying that Erin had no right to work there. Satisfied with her actions, Erin and Jin went home. On the other hand, Namcha, confused about Erin's whereabouts, met Erin and Jin at their home. At that time, Erin was annoyed to see Namcha's concern for Erin. She even wished for something bad to happen to Erin so she wouldn't see Namcha again. Hearing that, Namcha was hurt by Erin's words and disappointed to discover her true character. As Erin was about to reveal the truth that Erin was not her real sister, Jin tried to stop her, thinking Namcha didn't need to know. Then, after driving Erin away, Erin was still unhappy and cried because she didn't know what she really wanted. The next day, Namcha met Jin to ask about what happened to Erin. However, Jin kept the truth from Namcha and provoked him, saying if Namcha really liked Erin, he should have been able to find her and convince her not to leave him. Then, Namcha began to suspect that Jin was only after Erin's grandpa's inheritance. He believed Jin was courting Erin because he couldn't get Erin. When Jin denied the accusations and tried to hit Namcha, Namcha dodged the attack and warned Jin to stay away from Erin's family before leaving. After that, Namcha went to Erin's office to find her, but she wasn't there. Even some of her employees said that she might not come back to the office. Namcha was confused about what had happened, but then he remembered the professor's house. After hearing that Erin had sent books from the professor, Namcha finally found her at the professor's house. The professor said that Erin had just come and had been daydreaming alone in the garden. Shortly after, Namcha approached Erin, who looked sad. He thought she was sad because of Tan, but Erin was silent and did not tell Namcha what really happened. So, he hugged her to comfort her. Meanwhile, Jin was with Erin in the park, and had always wanted to play there since she was little, but her family forbade her because of her health condition. Despite her compassionate nature, she could be selfish and often disappointed others. At that time, they were starting to develop feelings for each other, but they still desired to be with people they couldn't have. When they could be together, they still thought about the person they couldn't have. Returning to Erin, the professor gave her advice to be more open and find her happiness, which she had often ignored. Erin was sad and devastated by the fact that she was adopted from her grandpa's family. Meanwhile, Namcha was getting worried because Erin still looked sad and distant. He tried to cheer her up by sleeping near her, but Erin remained silent and ignored him. He was confused and worried because Erin was not acting like herself. She usually scolded Namcha, but now she just chose to be silent and not care about what he did. The next day, Namcha woke up and was surprised to see that Irin was not there. He was worried that she had left without telling him, but then he smelled breakfast cooking. Irin was making breakfast for him, which was something she had never done before. Although the food didn't taste good, Namcha was happy and ate it all. At that time, Irin was confident in her cooking skills, but she was surprised to find out that it was too salty. After breakfast, Namcha and Irin walked around the city. She said she wanted to do something new and asked Namcha to take a photo of her. Then he expressed his feelings and proposed to Irin. After that, she felt calm and forgot about her worries, and she accepted his proposal. Meanwhile, Jin invited in to see the meteor shower, and was thrilled, and they went to a romantic place to watch it. On the other hand, Irin and Namcha also saw the meteor shower while camping together, and the professor even prepared food for them. When Namcha saw the beautiful meteor, he made a wish. That night was unforgettable, and Irin had accepted his proposal. After that, Namcha expressed his desire to take Irin home the following day and propose marriage to his family. He vowed to show them how much he loved her, hoping that they would accept their relationship. Then, Irin teased him, calling him a child, so Namcha picked her up and carried her into their tent where they spent the night together. The next day, Irin decided to return to Bangkok to deal with an urgent matter. Despite the professor's objections, he understood the gravity of her situation and did not prevent her from leaving without saying goodbye to Namcha. Meanwhile, An argued with her grandpa after she expelled Irin from their family and company. He was taken aback by the revelation that Irin was an adopted member of their family. He directed his anger towards Jin, who had disclosed the truth about Irin's status, and was saddened to see her grandpa beat Jin and rushed to protect him from further harm. At that moment, Grandpa was irritated, causing his illness to resurface, and he kicked In and Jin out of his room. In, feeling angry towards her grandpa, decided she would no longer obey him as she was the sole heir of the family. However, she felt uneasy when she recalled the time they had kissed. Meanwhile, Namcha woke up feeling happy, but his mood quickly soured when the professor informed him that Irin had left for Bangkok to attend to some important business. He was shocked and saddened that Irin had left without saying goodbye to him. Soon after, Irin arrived in Bangkok to see her grandpa. Previously, she had always looked up to him as a role model and a father figure, but things were about to take an unexpected turn. As soon as Irin arrived, she went straight to her grandpa's place, eager to catch up with him. But to her surprise, her grandpa didn't seem to understand her feelings and didn't feel guilty about what he had done. Grandfather then told her about the adoption process and how he had never agreed to it in the first place. But because Irin was more accomplished than his biological granddaughter, and he had decided to make Irin manage his company until In was ready to take over. At that time, Irin was disappointed to hear this, as she had dedicated her entire life to working hard for the company, which was like the heart of her family. She directed all her abilities to grow the company, thinking that her grandpa loved her like his own grandchild. However, Irin soon realized that she was just a tool being used by her grandpa, and that he had never loved her like his own family. This revelation shattered her heart, and she made the difficult decision to leave her grandpa's company and family. But her grandpa threatened to make her live in poverty if she left. To make matters worse, In arrived and saw Irin there. She hated Irin and insisted on sending her away. However, grandpa still needed Irin to take care of his company, so he told In to be quiet and not interfere. But at that moment, Irin didn't care anymore. She was disappointed to realize how selfish her grandpa had been all this time, and she was determined to leave and find her own path in life. Soon after, In stormed out of the room, consumed by her emotions. She pushed Irin away and hurt her feelings. Then, Irin tried to warn In to stop being rude or she would treat her the same way. But In was too upset to listen. As Irin was about to leave the house, Jin caught up with her. Suddenly, Namcha appeared and asked why Irin had left without telling him. She was tired of her problems and asked Namcha for some time alone. She didn't want to discuss anything with him. After Irin left, Jin provoked Namcha by assuming that he was not good enough for her since he didn't know what was going on with her. Then, Namcha bravely stood up to Jin and said that he was not worthy of Irin because even though he knew her problems, he did nothing to help. There, Namcha promised to help Irin and find out about her problems because he loved her and wouldn't leave her. Soon after, as the sun set on the village, Namcha summoned his courage to speak with his parents. He poured out his heart, confessing his deep love for Irin and his desire to marry her. But his father immediately rejected the idea, citing Irin's status as an adopted child from his grandpa's family. In his eyes, she wasn't worthy to be their daughter-in-law. Namcha's position as the heir to their family's hospital only made matters worse, as his father insisted he marry someone of their social standing. He even suggested In, the sole heir of another prominent family, as a potential match. But Namcha refused, knowing he could only marry someone he truly loved. Soon after, his mother tried to reason with her husband, reminding him that they couldn't force their children to follow their will. Meanwhile, In had her own plan. She asked her grandpa to arrange a marriage between her and Namcha, fearing that if she didn't, Irin would take him away. As the biological granddaughter, she believed she was the only one deserving of such a good man. Hearing that, her grandpa seemed to agree, even though he knew Namcha's heart truly belonged to Irin. Jin. The next day, Namcha was still heartbroken, unable to reach Irin. He longed to be by her side and help her with whatever troubles she was facing, but she had disappeared, and he had no idea where to find her. Thankfully, Namcha's mother understood his pain and joined forces to help him. Elsewhere, Irin was standing in front of her new apartment, feeling a mix of emotions. She had left her old life behind, including her grandpa who had threatened her. At that time, Jin was there, helping her settle in and providing some much-needed support. Then, Irin had decided to start fresh and wasn't going to let her grandpa's threats stop her. Meanwhile, An had invited Namcha's parents to discuss their marriage. Namcha's father immediately agreed, without even consulting his wife or Namcha. Hearing that, Jin was happy for An, who had always dreamed of marrying Namcha. But Namcha was against his father's decision. He was in love with Irin and wanted to break off his engagement with An. However, An couldn't refuse her grandpa's wishes, adding to Namcha's confusion. Desperate to find Irin, Namcha followed Jin, who he believed knew where Irin was hiding. He trailed Jin to an apartment building where Jin stopped in front of An. Meanwhile, Irin decided to return her car to her grandpa to avoid being indebted to him. After Jin left, Namcha finally found Irin and hugged her tightly, relieved to see her safe and sound. At that moment, Irin and Namcha were in love, but they decided to break up. However, Namcha didn't want to end things, but Irin insisted, threatening to leave forever if he didn't agree. Despite their love for each other, they had to go their separate ways because of the circumstances. Later on, Namcha met Jin, who purposely led him to meet Irin. Jin hoped that seeing Namcha would make Irin feel a little better. At that moment, Namcha was feeling down and invited Jin to drink with him. They talked about their feelings and shared their hearts. In the end, he got drunk and fell asleep. On the other hand, Jin took into a bar where she hoped to meet Namcha. But she was frustrated with Jin because he was still supporting Irin, even though he should have been on her side. Then, she asked him to help her with the plan to make Namcha marry her. Although Jin realized his mistake, he couldn't say no to An. So he took Namcha to a room. The next day, Namcha was shocked to find An in his bed. She claimed that they had slept together while he was drunk. But he knew that wasn't true and refused to accept her confession. Meanwhile, Irin was trying to start her new life by looking for a job. But all the companies rejected her because An's grandpa had sent letters to them. A few days later, An told her grandpa that she was pregnant with Namcha's child, even though he had never loved her. Her grandpa then decided to force Namcha to marry her. At that moment, Namcha was disappointed with An's selfishness and her grandpa's decision. The next day, Jin accompanied An to select her wedding dress, but their gloomy faces indicated that he had realized his mistake, while Namcha seemed disinterested in his own wedding arrangements. On another side of town, Tan and Peng were finally able to meet their best friend, Irin, after worrying about her for a long time. Then, Irin apologized for her mistake, and Tan, who was no longer angry, forgave her. Soon after, Namcha showed up to bid farewell to Irin because he was getting married to An the next day. At that moment, Irin tried to encourage Namcha by telling him that An's love for him was genuine and that she would surely make him happy. After that, Namcha and Irin parted ways with heavy hearts, for they had to accept the circumstances they were in. In a different location, Jin received a recording from An's car, which had met with an accident. Shortly after, Namcha and An's wedding day had finally arrived, but Namcha's mother couldn't help but feel heartbroken as her son tied the knot. Just as Namcha was about to put the ring on An's finger, Irin suddenly stood up and approached the altar. She wanted him to come with her because she had a special coupon that he gave her as a birthday present. At that moment, An was furious and kicked Irin out, but Irin played a recording of An's conversation before her accident. It was revealed that An had caused the accident on purpose so that Irin would feel guilty. Irin was extremely disappointed in her sister's behavior, despite always being sincere and willing to do anything for her. However, An still hated her sister. Then, Irin boldly declared that she came to take Namcha with her, feeling no obligation to sacrifice for her sister any longer. At that time, An was beyond frustrated and expressed her disdain for Irin's lack of shame in stealing her baby's father from within her own womb. However, Irin and Namcha were adamant that nothing had happened between them and An on that fateful night, and Jin had even testified to the same effect. Despite the threats from An's grandpa, Jin bravely stood up against An and ordered Irin and Namcha to leave immediately. He was aware of his mistake and did not let An's anger dissuade him from doing what was right. Finally, Irin and Namcha left happily, and Tan, Peng, and Namcha's mother were ecstatic to see them finally able to be with the people they loved. Tan even generously gave her car to Namcha so that he could pick up Irin. At that moment, An could do nothing but cry and continue to blame Jin for her misfortune. However, the next day was a happy one at Namcha's clinic. Irin had become Namcha's manager, and Namcha himself had become an influencer who made his parents proud. The series ends. The silly moral lesson of this story is don't let your family come between you and your true love, unless your family is a bunch of predatory animals.